Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode where I'll be interviewing SEO experts and entrepreneurs from around the world. We've got a very special episode for you today where I'll be speaking to the founder and developer behind Topical Map AI, Mr. Pete McPherson, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi. What's up, Todd? Thank you. Oh, it's Todd. I just saw Todd pop up, our business partner. Charles, I'm sorry.
It's
Thanks
all
for
good.
having me, man. Excited to be
I
here.
appreciate it. Awesome. Great start to the show already. And shout out to Todd as well. Might as well
I'm
make it happen.
shutting down Discord right now. Right now.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Let's not focus on the SaaS projects anymore. So actually, let's focus on the SaaS project. So let's jump into the questions. The very first question I have for you is actually, how did you get started into blogging, coding,
Yeah,
developing, affiliate, SEO, email, SaaS, social,
all the
website
things.
acquisitions? How did you get started in all these things?
I'll give you the short version. The short version is I never knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. I went to college. I went through like 5 different majors. I ended up graduating and getting a degree in sociology, which I did nothing with. And I went back in accounting and I got degrees in accounting and I got full-time, like grown-up jobs, corporate jobs in accounting, and I hated it. And I've been blogging since 2009, mostly like online, some like personal diary stuff. And then I had like a bluegrass music blog, just like hobby stuff. No idea what SEO was, but I started just writing on the internet, creating websites, that sort of stuff. And mostly for fun. I did that for years. When I was in accounting and I wanted to quit, do something different, right? Side hustles. I started more and more websites from the affiliate side of things, SEO, a little bit of e-commerce, which I was terrible at, FYI. I lost like thousands of dollars on my very first e-com, and it was a mess. But I never stopped trying things. And in 2016, I did end up quitting my corporate career. I took a job at a startup that was like half-time. They're going to pay me like half-time salary, but I got some benefits as well. And I could, do side hustles. So I could figure out my next thing and the other half. Well, spoiler alert, I moved my family a couple of hours down the road. My wife quit her work. We had 2 kids. And then this startup like lays me off after one paycheck. I got to figure out what to do. So that was the start of Do You Even Blog, which is a podcast I started in 2017. And little by little, I grew the income. I did more SEO sites. I had a couple of dozen at one point, a couple of YouTube channels, a couple of podcasts. The coding thing didn't start until just a couple of years ago, but it's just been, I was going to say boring, maybe not boring, but it's exactly what you would think, right? I started knowing nothing. I had a lot of failures and I just kept trying things and kept trying things. And here we are. Been doing it full time for about 8 years.
A slow and steady progression.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's a pretty good journey, though. To be fair, aside from maybe the getting laid off after a month's salary part, that might not be the most nice of a gut punch. But in
Yeah.
general, it seems like you had a pretty good trajectory, and like you said, you've kind of done a lot of the projects, right? So you have a bit of a taste for everything and an idea of how to do a lot of different things. So
Right.
I want to ask you. You said there you just did coding in the last 2 years, or last couple of years, even. Was that a direct result of AI? Or was that a result of something else?
Yes and no. I always wanted to code things since like 2008, 2000, since back in college even. I found it interesting. I would dabble here and there. I dabbled in JavaScript. I dabbled in Ruby on Rails, PHP a little bit, and all this other stuff over the years. And every like 12 months, I'd get an itch to like, oh, I actually want to build a project. And I would get into it and I would realize this is going to take me, this is going to take all my time. Like if I actually wanted to do this, it would just take all my time. So to answer your question, yes, when like I've been following AI for years and years, but when that first like ChatGPT, December of 2021 or 22, whatever year it was, 22, that was like, oh, okay, now this doesn't actually have to take up all of my time anymore. Now I have a little bit of knowledge of code already. I can use this to leverage some of the logic that's more advanced, how to put things together. I can literally ask how to deploy stuff. Like I have this assistant now that allows me to actually ship projects. And so when that happened, I did the same thing I've always done, which is let's see if I can build something. And it took me 2 months, but I launched it. It was the first project that I was like, oh crap, like I actually coded this and I launched it. And since that day, that was like 2 years ago now, that's been like my full-time job. right? Like just getting better, churning out projects, some of which have no users, some of which have a couple thousand users, and everything in between. So yes, AI was really the catalyst behind this.
Awesome. So you have, as you just said there, kind of like an MVP first mentality, right? Which I kind of agree with to an extent. And it seems that mentality has kind of taken off this year as a kind of relation to Levels IO and Danny Postmada on Twitter and stuff with their like photo AI and stuff like that. A lot of them are just saying, ship, deploy, wait for problems after the fact and wait for the money to kind of print itself, right? I like your approach, especially in the digital marketing and SEO world. What have you learned from constantly shipping, especially so rapidly, right?
Yeah. I would say one of the biggest benefits to, I mean, not just code, but shipping, anything, whether that's content projects like websites or YouTube or podcast or code or whatever. I'd say the huge benefit here is getting better at determining what's going to work or predicting what might work. When you first start, you have no idea. You're like, oh, this is going to be like $1 billion app idea, and then it's crap, right? And you don't have any users and you have no audience or whatever that is. I think the more you ship, the more you build, you start to figure out like, you know what? There's actually not any potential with this one. Maybe I'll do it anyways because it sounds fun. That's fine. Go have hobbies. But you get better at trying to predict, actually, this is a pain point people have and will pay for. And I don't think I'm the best at this, of course. I'm not pretending to be. But that is one thing I've noticed about myself over the past year, 2 years, is determining like, I have this idea. I have lots of ideas. Going through that list and trying to figure out like, I think I can actually launch this. I think I can actually build it. And I know how to market it. Or at least that first step of the marketing. That's what I'm best at. I'm not good at the like scaling thing. That's not me. But I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, 100%. And it kind of leads me almost to the next one kind of perfectly, which is how do you come up with those new project ideas constantly? Is it just looking at gaps in the market? Is it using other tools and saying, oh, why don't they have this feature? Is it kind of, or is it just some secret mad scientist source?
Well, you mentioned Peter Levels, and there's a handful of other indie devs or whatever they call themselves these days that I follow, and they all pretty much say the same thing. And I think I agree. And this is going to be my official answer. Scratch your own itch. That's where all my things have come from. So Topical Map AI came from the fact that I hired multiple firms to produce a topical map. I ran into this. I interviewed this guy named Casey Botticello, doesn't matter, who's just crushing it with a few websites over the past couple of years. And he kept bringing this up. This is like a couple of years back. Topical Authority. And I kind of knew what that was, but I wasn't totally an expert. So I'm looking around. I'm hiring people, service agencies or whatnot, to build me topical maps for existing sites, new sites, etc. And they're charging me like, I won't tell you how much they charge me, but thousands and thousands of dollars in some cases. And their deliverables literally just like a spreadsheet. And then I'm looking at this like, yo, I could have asked ChatGPT for this. And sure enough, I went and found some YouTubers. They're kind of doing this. And the tool was built out of the fact that like, okay, I literally just want to make this easy for people. I honestly just want to make it cheap for people to start with. They just need to be able to get some data, a topical map, some topical authority, even if it's not perfect, instant and cheap, right? It's my own itch, solving my own itch. So I think the more people do things, the more projects people start, they can develop a mindset of just realizing when they're having a pain point. They don't always, not everybody does this, right? They don't think about this. I think about this constantly. I have a pen and paper with me everywhere I go. I have like 20 pain points a day, small stuff, stupid stuff related to chocolate, stuff related to pickleball, stuff related to weight training, like everything. I now just make a list of every single pain point I have. And, it's a potential business idea one day.
I definitely think I should have a notebook in front of me, though sometimes my handwriting is that illegible, even I can't read it myself. So.
Oh, totally. Mine's awful.
Yeah, I think most developers and most coders tend to have pretty terrible handwriting, to be fair. I think it's just we're so used to the typewriters these days, right? What do you
Yeah.
prefer in terms of being a one-man gang, or you just said you worked for like startups and kind of in teams and stuff as well? Do you like having that team aspect of moving towards a giant project, or do you really like being that one-man gang that can just deploy, deploy, deploy?
Yeah, it's funny because we've discussed this question off air as we work on projects. I am definitely a one man operation as opposed to a gang operation. Not because I don't like people necessarily, but I also just love control over my own hours. And Charles, you already know this, but I try to work as little as possible. I do, and that's hard when you have a team. I'm not opposed to it. I have freelancers, I have contractors that have worked for me over the years, and everything's great there. I just really like my independence. I like my freedom. I have two kids. I have a new puppy that we got about 2 months ago, which has been a ginormous pain in my rear. And I just prefer to do that stuff, to be frank. It's funny. I'll say one more thing because I think maybe we were gonna talk about this. You called me a developer, and thank you. By the way, I used to tell people I'm not. I'm not a developer. I'm an indie hacker or indie dev or whatever you want to consider those people. And I was realizing this morning, maybe I am now. Like I feel like I was not a wolf in sheep's clothing. What's the word? I'm like a duck that you see on TikTok or Instagram who lost its family. It got separated its family and got adopted by like a pack of wolves that didn't eat it. And now the duck thinks it's a wolf. That's me as a developer. Like I throw together tools, I hack together tools. But I think at some point over the past year or two, maybe I got proficient enough where you might actually consider me a developer. I just thought I'd throw that out there. I just thought that out there.
I normally put whatever I normally put people's labels, and again, it's horrible to label anyone anything, right? But
That's a badge of
labels,
honor, man. I'm a developer. That actually
for
sounds
sure.
good.
Well, I normally label people based on how whatever they're spending the most amount of time on, right? So I used
Mm,
to think, oh, I'm an SEO because I used to spend all my time doing SEO, SEO, SEO. Nowadays, I spend
totally.
most of my time like delegating and speaking to people and doing connections and everything. That's more entrepreneur stuff, and maybe even like investor stuff. Maybe not quite yet,
Mhm.
but
Yeah,
I definitely don't see myself as really an SEO anymore. And that might be crazy to some people out there, especially that have followed me for like the last 15 years. But I really
yeah,
do think, as you just said, you do kind of evolve towards a point, and a lot of the time you don't even realize you're doing it. It just kind of happens as a result of your day-to-day activities, right?
for sure. Yeah. I used to consider myself a blogger. That was my number one label. Not so anymore.
Yeah. When was the last time you wrote a blog post?
That's a great question. January or February. January or
Boom.
February. Earlier this year.
Yeah.
6, 7 months ago.
Yeah. Damn. See, I wouldn't class you as a blogger anymore either, to be fair, at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the
And
next
by I
question,
wrote a blog post, I mean AI wrote a blog post that I
the
engineered. But
edited
yeah.
and human put in there. Well,
Right.
that kind of puts me perfectly onto my next question, which what are your thoughts on the last year plus for bloggers in Google, right? And especially now with the recent, albeit mostly small recoveries that we've seen over the last couple of weeks from the August core update. What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on everything that has happened around that kind of situation slash situations?
Yeah. I can't blame people who are frustrated. I used to not blame, but I used to think Google updates are always going to come. It's part of our job as SEOs and marketers to overcome them, to adapt with the changes and do something different and figure out new ways to get eyeballs, right? That's what marketers do. Things are always going to change. I think since August, September last year, like the helpful content update stuff, I have more sympathy and empathy now for people who got crushed because my own sites got crushed. I was making like um I had a mechanical keyboard brand. This is all public now, so I can share it. It was making like 3 grand a month, which was easy. It was only like a year and a half old at the time. I wasn't even like focusing on it. It was kind of making some decent money, right? It got crushed by Google. And I mean, we've all heard the same thing from bloggers and creators. I uh I think things are moving faster, right? Like AI came out a couple of years ago, and now all of a sudden, every tool on the planet has AI, and your phone has AI, and your smart TVs have AI now, and all the above. That's okay. Things are just changing faster. And I think the Google updates, as we've seen, are also changing maybe a little bit faster or in more drastic ways. So I think, number one, the ability to adapt never been more important, and it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, right? The ability to completely switch gears. Different, could be different projects entirely. It could be massive strategy shifts. Like the ability to adapt, super important. And the ability to adapt a lot, super important. And there's three things. Number two, I think patience and forgiveness. I think as things move faster, people get more and more greedy. Somehow, I know this is me personally. I want things to work and I want them to work right now. And when I don't understand what Google's trying to do and I don't understand how to rank content anymore, I get kind of beat up with myself and frustrated with myself. I used to be way more patient when it comes to that. I think that is going to be key as these systems sort themselves out. We got to be patient. Don't sell off projects immediately just because they got a little bit of dip. Like we can hold out. We can figure this SEO or Google or AI thing out. We can figure it out. And the only other thing I'll say, I'll close with this. You said you've been doing like SEO for like 15 plus years. I still think it's the same game now as it was then. It's people using the internet to find things. Period. Search, Pinterest, YouTube, Google, anything. They're going to keep doing that. Whether they ask ChatGPT or Google or anything else remains to be seen. But as long as people need information, there's got to be somebody that gives it to them. And so if you can't figure out how to get in front of people, whether it's this platform or that platform, you can't figure out how to use AI to compete, like you're going to get left behind. It's always been this way. It just looks different now. I think people don't want to accept that. People think that we've gone over the cliff and we can't come back. It's always been the same game, in my opinion.
Yeah,
Again,
100%. No, I agree as well. And I also think to an extent that, as you just said, users will continue to do the same thing, and it just depends on what platform you're at. And as SEOs, we aren't Google optimization experts. We're supposed to be search engine optimization experts, right? So we should be able to adapt to those other search engines, those other search algorithms and things like that. Otherwise, you're not really an SEO. You're a Google right? And I don't want to call you a Googler because that might be offensive to some SEOs. So yeah. The second last question I have is, right, how do you manage all of these projects at once? And that actually comes from Samutra from X.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the answer is I don't. I've been telling people for years. I once had a mentor, this was like in 2017, a mentor tell me, Pete, I think you have amazing potential out of everything you do. I'm going to give you that as a compliment. However, I think your biggest problem now, and maybe forevermore, is going to be focus. And I raised my hand and I said, you are absolutely correct. And that is still the case to this day. So how do I balance so many projects? And I do have a lot of projects. I don't. I usually work on one thing at a time, period. And not like I work on one thing for like 80% of my time and like 20% of my time elsewhere. I am usually like 95% focused on one thing at a time, but I switch very quickly. I've coded and shipped like 6 projects maybe in the past 2 years, like apps, web apps primarily. And I think I have 5 or 6 content sites and 3 YouTube channels and 2 podcasts, but I'm never working on more than one thing at a time. It may look like I balance a lot of projects, but I really don't. I don't know. I'm not superhuman. I'm not even like massively productive anymore. I just focus on one thing at a time relentlessly and then lose focus like a dog seeing a squirrel. And then I run after something else. And that's how I like to work, by the way. I'll close with that. I do this intentionally now. Like I'm aware I don't have a lot of focus and I've structured my work life to revolve around that. I'm not like a bajillionaire. I don't make a crap ton of money, but I make more than enough to do what I want to do for the most part. Right. So it's a lame answer, but that's the truth.
No, it kind of perfectly puts me onto the last question as well, which is how do you stay motivated, right? Because a lot of people tend to get motivated by the fact that they have got like one baby that they're going to build to be this big giant company. You know, they've got that thing. But because you're switching between different projects, different teams, different businesses, different business partners, even sometimes, right? How are you staying constantly motivated and even avoiding burnout when you're juggling kind of all these even multiple different roles as a solo entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, I just pulled up this note I have from Noah Kagan's book, The $1 Million Weekend, I think that's what it's called. It came out like a year ago or something. I'm going to read it to you because this is my answer. Quote, "This isn't about willpower or self-discipline. No one is going to nag, scold, or intimidate you into starting a business. My personal favorite way to approach starting a business is to have fun. Make it fun, and you will overcome the fear. So ignore the fear point, but that's my answer. Like, I don't stay motivated. I don't think about motivation at all. I don't even feel like I stay inspired. I try to the best of my ability not to work on things I don't want to work on. And it's funny, when you have fun doing something, you're going to be motivated. Motivation is never an interest in people's head when they're doing a hobby that they enjoy. They just want to have fun. That's the human nature in general. And I think I'm pretty good at organizing my work life around that. So that's it. I do suffer from burnout. I'm suffering from burnout right now on a project just because I've been focusing
Sorry.
on it for a couple of months. Charles said sorry. Charles was like the genius who's like telling me what to do. I just have to like implement it and be done with it. But other than that, like honestly, I just try and have fun. I've structured the way to get paid for having fun. And I'm not an expert at it yet, but that's my philosophy. That's what I'm working towards.
I think this was a really interesting and great episode. And honestly, I think you've given people a lot to consider and think about, especially in this world, which continually seems to be quite pessimistic recently, right? And you've just given people a window of hope genuinely into like blogging, development, SaaS project, all of this kind of stuff. It was a really fantastic episode. Is there anywhere where people can find you online afterwards?
Thank you, Charles. I would say I've just switched over. So people can find me at myname.com, PeteMcPherson.com. That's it. I used to point people elsewhere, but now I'm trying to just have one weekly roundup newsletter. It really is like a roundup. Like I just kind of share interesting things. It's kind of revolved around entrepreneurship and marketing, but not really. It's kind of gotten away from me a little bit. But PeteMcPherson.com, there's a link right there. There's a form you can sign up if you really want to follow around. That's it.
I'll put a link to that in the description down below. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace.